My parents refused to help with my sick child because they said he wasn't family to them anymore. When my son's serious illness brought me to my knees, struggling under the weight of medical bills, exhaustion, and fear, I turned to the two, people who were supposed to be my unwavering support system, especially for their grandchild. Instead of a lifeline, I found a wall of cold, conditional rejection, a heartbreaking redefinition of what it means to be family that excluded the most innocent among us. My name is Sarah, and the past year had been a relentless battle against my 5-year-old son Leo's illness. He was diagnosed with a chronic condition that demanded constant attention, frequent trips to specialists, and hospital stays that felt like they were ripping our lives apart. Leo, my bright, sweet boy, faced it all with more courage than I sometimes possessed. As his single mother, the burden of his care, the financial strain, and the emotional toll often felt suffocating. There were days I didn't know how I would make it through. My parents had always projected an image of a strong, united family, emphasizing loyalty and mutual support. While our relationship had its complexities, I believed deep down that in a true crisis, especially one involving my child, they would step up. They were Leo's grandparents, after all. They sent birthday cards, occasionally called, maintaining a polite, if somewhat distant, connection. But Leo's illness had recently taken a turn, requiring more intensive treatment and more frequent, longer appointments that were impossible to juggle with my work schedule. I was at a breaking point, physically drained, emotionally raw, and facing a very real possibility of having to take unpaid leave, which would devastate my already precarious finances. I desperately needed help. Not money, but practical support. A few hours of childcare during a crucial meeting, a ride to a distant specialist, just someone to sit with Leo so I could catch my breath. Swallowing my pride and the lingering hurt from past disagreements, I called them. I laid out the situation honestly, my voice thick with exhaustion and vulnerability. I explained how difficult things had become, how much I was struggling, and I specifically asked if they could help with watching Leo for a few hours next Tuesday during a vital appointment. I spoke of Leo, of his bravery, trying to connect them to the grandson they rarely saw, but surely, I believed, loved. There was silence on the other end after I finished speaking. A long, drawn-out silence that stretched and tightened, devoid of the immediate comfort or concern I had so desperately hoped for. It was a silence that spoke volumes, filling me with a chilling premonition that this call was not going to go the way I needed it to. Finally, my mother's voice, cool and measured, broke the silence. "Sarah," she began, her tone cautious, distant. "About your request for help. With Leo." My heart plummeted. This was it. The moment of truth. Would their supposed family values prevail, or would something else dictate their response? My mother's cautious tone hung in the air, followed by another tense silence. I waited, my heart pounding, desperately hoping their hesitation was simply shock at the extent of Leo's needs, not a prelude to rejection. Then, my father spoke, his voice flat, devoid of the warmth I'd clung to in my memory of their family values. "Sarah," he said, his tone measured and distant. "We discussed this after you called. And frankly, after everything that happened with you and his father." My mother cut in, her voice sharp and final, delivering the blow I was completely unprepared for. "The child isn't our grandchild, Sarah. Not in the way that matters to us. He's the product of a relationship we disapproved of, a choice you made, against our guidance. You chose your path, and the consequences of that path, including the child, are yours alone to bear. He is not family to us." The words slammed into me, stealing my breath. Not family?" I stammered, my voice barely a whisper. "What are you saying? He's Leo. He's your grandson." He's a constant reminder of your defiance, my father stated, his voice chillingly devoid of emotion. A symbol of the life you insisted on building against our wishes. We warned you that your choices would have consequences, Sarah. This is one of them. Their cruel logic twisted the knife. They were punishing an innocent child, a sick, vulnerable boy, for the perceived sin of his mother's choices. They were disowning their own flesh and blood, redefining the sacred bond of grandparent and grandchild based on their narrow, prejudiced view of my life. "How can you say that?" I cried out, the pain and outrage rising in my voice. "He's a little boy. He's sick. He needs you. How can you deny your own grandson because you didn't approve of who his father was? He didn't ask for this. He's innocent." "He is your responsibility," my mother said, her voice unwavering, cold as ice. "You made your choices. You chose to step outside of our family's expectations, Sarah. And that choice has consequences that extend to the life you created. We will not enable or support that choice by pretending this child is a part of our family in any meaningful way." Their refusal was absolute, their reasoning horrific. The family values they had preached my entire life were a lie, contingent on my obedience. They were willing to let their own grandchild, a sick child, suffer, rather than extend unconditional love and support because he represented my supposed defiance. "So that's it," I whispered, the betrayal so profound it stole the air from my lungs. "You're abandoning your sick grandson. Because you're punishing me." There was a pause, a confirmation of their chilling stance, and then the click of the phone as they hung up. They chose their prejudice over compassion, their control over their grandchild's well-being. I was left holding a dead phone, the silence on the line a stark contrast to the storm raging inside me. Heartbreak, fury, disbelief, and the overwhelming, terrifying reality that I was truly alone in facing Leo's illness and the life I had built. The click of the phone line going dead echoed in the silent apartment, a sound colder and sharper than any reprimand. They had hung up. They had abandoned their sick grandson. My hand trembled, dropping the phone onto the sofa cushion as if it were suddenly contaminated. I sat there, frozen. The words, "He is not family to us," and "a constant reminder of your defiance," replaying in my mind like a grotesque broken record. The desperate need for help, the vulnerability I had exposed, was momentarily forgotten, replaced by a tidal wave of shock, horror, and sheer unadulterated disbelief at the depth of their cruelty. How could they? How could any grandparent look at their own grandchild, know he was ill and struggling, and declare him not family? Not because of anything he had done, but because of my past. Their supposed family values, the unconditional love they had, always preached, felt like the most hypocritical lie imaginable. It was conditional, transactional, and based on their narrow, prejudiced views. The bond between grandparent and grandchild felt sacred, almost primal, yet they had severed it with chilling detachment. My eyes drifted to where Leo was sleeping, tucked under his favorite blanket on the living room couch. His small chest rose and fell shallowly with each breath. He was so innocent, so vulnerable, facing his illness with a bravery that constantly amazed me. And these were the people who were supposed to dote on him, spoil him, be his safe harbor. Instead, they saw him as a symbol of my perceived failures, a consequence to be disowned. A protective rage, fierce and hot, surged through me, momentarily eclipsing the pain. He was my child, my family, and their rejection said everything about their own cold hearts, nothing about his worth. But the rage was quickly followed by the crushing weight of reality. I was alone. Truly, utterly alone in this fight. The medical bills, the constant appointments, the exhaustion, the fear for Leo's future, all of it rested squarely on my shoulders. The safety net I had naively believed existed was gone, replaced by a terrifying void. The isolation felt physical, a heavy cloak smothering me. I needed to share this unbelievable burden, to hear someone else voice the outrage that was threatening to consume me. I fumbled for my phone again, dialing Maria's number. She answered, her voice cheerful, unaware of the devastation that had just struck. "Hey, Sarah. Everything okay?" "Maria," I choked out, the word dissolving into sobs. It's my parents. They refused to help. With Leo. Because..." Recounting the call felt surreal, putting their monstrous words into the air. They said Leo wasn't family to them anymore, because of my marriage to his dad. They said he's a reminder of my choices, and they won't help. There was a stunned silence from Maria's end, then a gasp. "Sarah, oh my God. They said that? That's horrific. That's not human. How could any grandparent say that about their grandchild, let alone when he's sick?" Her voice was filled with the same disbelief and furious outrage that was churning inside me. Maria's reaction, her immediate and complete validation of my feelings, was a lifeline in the storm. She didn't try to soften it, didn't make excuses for them. She simply mirrored the shock and anger I felt, confirming that their actions were indeed monstrous. Talking through the details, rehashing their cold words, helped anchor me slightly, pulling me back from the brink of complete despair. By the time I hung up with Maria, the immediate paralyzing shock had begun to recede, leaving behind a deep, aching heartbreak and a burning sense of injustice. I was devastated by my parents' betrayal, by their cruel abandonment of Leo. But I was no longer completely alone. Maria's unwavering support was a beacon in the darkness. The road ahead, caring for Leo, navigating his illness, and processing the profound wound inflicted by my own parents, was long and daunting. But with Maria by my side, I knew I would find the strength to face it. The immediate aftermath of my parents' call was a storm of pain and disbelief, but the reality of Leo's needs was a grounding force. My own devastation had to take a back seat to monitoring his breathing, ensuring he took his medication, and preparing for the upcoming specialist appointment that had triggered my desperate call in the first place. His health was the only thing that truly mattered in that moment. Even as I went through the motions of caring for him, the echoes of my parents' words haunted me. "He is not family to us." A constant reminder of your defiance. The casual cruelty of disowning their grandchild, a sick child, as a punishment for my past choices, was an open wound. It wasn't just the denial of help that hurt. It was the redefinition of family, the stripping away of Leo's place in their lives based on their own rigid prejudices. The hypocrisy of the family values they had always preached felt like a bitter, mocking lie. As the initial shock began to subside, replaced by a dull, throbbing ache, I faced a difficult truth. Maintaining a relationship with people capable of such a monstrous act towards my child was impossible. How could I ever trust them again? How could I expose Leo to that kind of conditional, potentially damaging love? The pain of cutting ties was immense, severing the last fragile threads of connection. But keeping them in our lives would be a betrayal of Leo's right to unconditional love and a violation of my own emotional well-being. The decision was clear, agonizingly so. For Leo, and for my own strength, I had to let them go. Maria was my rock during this time. She didn't just offer comfort, she actively helped me navigate the immediate practical challenges. She came over, helped me organize Leo's medication schedule, sat with him while I made urgent calls to reschedule work or find alternative transport for appointments. Her unwavering support highlighted, in painful contrast, the gaping void left by my parents' absence. The practical difficulties of being the sole caregiver for a child with complex medical needs were immense. Juggling work, appointments, pharmacy runs, and just the basic needs of running a household felt like an endless uphill battle. There were days I was so physically and emotionally exhausted, I didn't know how I would keep going. Missing work for appointments meant lost wages, adding to the financial strain of medical bills. Finding reliable childcare that understood Leo's specific needs was a constant source of anxiety. This was the reality my parents had condemned me to, the burden they had chosen to ignore. But with each challenge I faced and overcame, a flicker of determination grew brighter. The anger at my parents, initially overwhelming, began to solidify into a fierce resolve. They thought I was weak, that I couldn't handle this without them. They were wrong. My love for Leo was a boundless source of strength. I would manage. I would find resources. I would build a life for Leo that was secure and full of love. A life that needed nothing from those who had so cruelly cast him aside. The difficult decision to distance myself from my parents had been made. A painful severing of ties. The practical challenges of caring for Leo alone were real and demanding, but they were met with a growing resilience. Fueled by the burning injustice of my parents' actions and a fierce protective love for my son, I was determined to build our future on our own terms, proving that we didn't need their conditional acceptance to be a family. A real, loving, unwavering family. The difficult decision to distance myself from my parents was made, but the reality of managing Leo's complex medical needs alone was a daily, exhausting test. Juggling my job with frequent doctor's appointments and unexpected flares of his illness meant constantly negotiating with my boss, working late into the night, and sacrificing my own rest and well-being. Transportation to specialists across town became a major logistical hurdle. Coordinating rides, factoring in Leo's fatigue, and the sheer cost added layers of stress. The physical exhaustion was immense, a constant dull ache that no amount of sleep seemed to fix. But the resolve that had solidified after my parents' call fueled my actions. I couldn't rely on the people who had abandoned us, so I had to build my own safety net. Maria was a constant source of strength, offering practical help whenever her own schedule allowed, but I knew I needed more widespread support. I became more active in the online support group for parents of children with Leo's condition, finding a wealth of shared knowledge, emotional validation, and practical advice on everything from navigating insurance to finding specialized equipment. Also started reaching out to community resources. It was a frustrating process of phone calls, paperwork, and waiting lists. But gradually, I found programs that offered limited financial assistance for medical expenses and transportation vouchers for appointments. I connected with a social worker at the hospital who became an invaluable resource, helping me access information and support services I wouldn't have known about otherwise. Finding a retired neighbor who was willing to provide consistent, reliable childcare for short periods at a reasonable rate felt like winning the lottery. Despite building this network, the emotional weight of my parents' betrayal and the sheer pressure of my situation were still present. There were moments, often when I was bone-tired or facing a particularly daunting medical update, that the sadness would resurface. The unfairness of it all, the knowledge that my parents could have lightened the load, but chose not to because of their own cruel prejudices, was a burden I carried. But with each challenge I met, each hurdle I cleared with the help of my chosen support system, my own sense of independence and resourcefulness grew. I was learning to advocate for Leo, for myself, navigating complex systems and relying on the kindness of strangers and the strength of newfound connections. Leo, in his resilient way, adapted to our new normal. He understood that Grandma and Grandpa weren't around much anymore. One evening, while drawing, he asked, "Why don't Grandma and Grandpa visit like friends' grandparents?" My heart ached, but I kept my answer simple and reassuring, focusing on the love and support he did receive. "They're busy, sweetie, but we have lots of people who love us very, very much, don't we? Like Auntie Maria and Mrs. Gable next door." That same week, a late-night fever spike sent us scrambling. I called Maria in a panic, needing someone to stay with Leo while I rushed to the pharmacy. Without hesitation, she was there, her calm presence a stark contrast to my fear. Having that reliable support in a crisis that my parents had explicitly refused to help with was a powerful moment. It wasn't just practical help, It was a profound affirmation that I had built a family around us that wouldn't abandon us when things got tough. I was weary from the constant demands of my life, but I was no longer defined by my parents' cruel refusal. I was a woman facing immense challenges, but I was doing so with resilience, resourcefulness, and a growing network of genuine support. I was proving, every single day, that Leo and I could build a life filled with love and security, a life that didn't need the conditional acceptance of those who had chosen to turn their backs on us. Months folded into a year, and while challenges remained, my life with Leo had found a new, steady rhythm. The initial crisis mode had subsided, replaced by a routine built on careful planning, open communication with my support system, and the unwavering priority of Leo's health. I was no longer just surviving. I was actively managing, navigating the complexities of Leo's care and my work with increasing confidence. My definition of family had become clearer and stronger than ever before. It was Leo, of course, the brilliant, resilient center of my world. It was Maria, my rock, who celebrated Leo's good days and offered comfort on the bad ones. It was my neighbor, whose reliable help was a consistent blessing. It was the parents from the online support group who understood the unique anxieties and small triumphs of life with a child like Leo. This chosen family, bound by empathy and shared experience, provided a depth of unconditional love and support that made the absence of my parents feel less like a void and more like a space we simply didn't need to fill with conditional negativity. The sharp pain of my parents' rejection had softened into a dull ache, a scar from a wound that was mostly healed. Their absence was no longer a source of daily anguish, but a quiet reality I had accepted. I wasn't waiting for their call, their apology, or their change of heart. I had seen who they truly were when faced with vulnerability and need, and I had made peace with the fact that their limitations and prejudices were their own, not a reflection of Leo's worth or mine. Leo continued to thrive, a testament to his own incredible spirit and the consistent, loving care he received. He was hitting milestones, excelling in school, and his laughter was a constant source of joy. Seeing him happy, despite the health challenges he faced, reinforced that I had made the right decision to shield him from the potential pain of his grandparents' conditional acceptance. His well-being was the most powerful proof that we didn't need their definition of family to build a life filled with love and security. My identity had solidified. I was no longer defined by my parents' rejection or the challenges I faced. I was defined by my strength, my resilience, my fierce love for my son, and my ability to build a supportive, loving life against the odds. I was an independent woman, a capable caregiver, and the proud mother of a thriving child. From a place of quiet strength, I could reflect on my parents' actions with a degree of detachment. Their need for control, their inability to see past their own expectations, had cost them a relationship with a wonderful grandchild. It was a sad reality, a consequence of their own choices, but it no longer held power over me. I consciously chose to focus my energy on the present and the future, on nurturing the love and connections in my life, rather than dwelling on the pain of the past. My life felt stable, grounded, and full of purpose. The challenges of Leo's illness were still there, a part of our reality, but they were challenges we faced together, surrounded by a network of genuine love. My focus was firmly on Leo and the bright future we were building, independent and empowered. My life had settled into a new, stable rhythm, supported by the family I had chosen, and I was looking towards the future with confidence and a sense of peace. The challenges remained, but they were met with growing strength and resilience. More years passed, weaving together a tapestry of doctor's appointments, school plays, soccer games, and quiet evenings at home. Leo was no longer the fragile 5-year-old clinging to my side. He was a strong, engaging boy, navigating childhood, with the resilience of someone who had faced challenges early on. While his illness remained a part of his life, managed with consistent care and vigilance, it did not define him. He was active, curious, and surrounded by the unwavering love of the family we had built. My parents remained absent. No phone calls, no cards, no attempts at contact. The initial pain of their refusal had long since faded into a quiet, unremarkable absence. They had made their choice, and we had built our lives without them. Their definition of family, conditional and cruel, had no place in the vibrant, loving reality Leo and I shared with Maria, my neighbor, and the circle of friends who had become our anchors. One Saturday morning, picking up groceries at a local market, I heard my name called. Turning, I saw my mother standing a few aisles away, my father beside her. They looked older, perhaps a little more worn than I remembered from the distant sighting years ago. Leo was a few steps ahead of me, looking at some fruit. My mother took a hesitant step towards me. "Sarah, is that really you?" Her voice was a mixture of surprise and something I couldn't quite decipher. Curiosity? Regret. "Hello, Mother." "Father?" I replied, my voice calm and composed. There was no anger, no lingering pain, just a quiet detachment. My father nodded, his expression unreadable. My mother's eyes flickered towards Leo, who had turned to look at us, sensing the unusual interaction. "He's Leo?" my mother asked, her voice softer than it had been on that fateful phone call. "Yes, he's doing very well," I said, stepping slightly, closer to Leo, a subtle, protective gesture that was now ingrained. An awkward silence hung in the air. They looked at Leo, then back at me. There was no apology, no explanation for their years of silence and refusal, just the weight of their absence standing between us. "Well," my mother said, finally breaking the silence, her tone returning to a more formal politeness. "It was not unexpected seeing you." "You too," I replied. I offered a polite, small smile that didn't quite reach my eyes, a finality in my posture. "We should be going. Enjoy your day." I turned and walked away, Leo's hand in mine, leaving them standing there in the grocery aisle. There was no surge of pain or regret as I walked away, only a quiet confirmation. I had handled it with composure. Their presence no longer rattled me. They were strangers. Later that day, celebrating Leo's successful checkup with Maria and her family over pizza, the warmth and laughter filled my home. Seeing Leo surrounded by the genuine love of our chosen family, sharing stories and jokes with Maria, I knew, unequivocally, that I had made the right decision. My parents had chosen to miss out on this, on Leo's joy, on the strength of our bond, on the reality of the loving family we had built. Sarah had navigated a brief, unexpected encounter with her parents with composure and detachment, reinforcing the emotional distance she had gained and the strength of the family she had, built with Leo and her chosen network. She felt a sense of peace and confidence in the life she had created. The years that followed that devastating phone call and the eventual, distant encounter have woven together into a life that is full, rich, and defined by love, not loss. Looking back on the desperate woman who made that call, pleading for help for her sick child, it feels like a lifetime ago. The pain of her parents' cruel refusal was profound, but it was the catalyst that forced her to build something stronger, something real, from the ground up. Family is not a label determined by blood or granted based on conditions. It is built on love, sacrifice, support, and the unwavering choice to be there for one another. My parents clung to a definition of family that was rigid and exclusive, based on prejudice and control. In doing so, they missed out on the immeasurable joy and light that is Leo. Leo is a testament to resilience, growing into a happy, kind, and confident young man. His illness is a part of his story, but it does not define him. He is loved, supported, and thriving, surrounded by the vibrant energy of our chosen family. Maria, our steadfast anchor, my neighbor, whose kindness remains a constant, and the wider circle of friends who have celebrated our triumphs and helped us through challenges. This is the family who showed up when biological ties failed, proving that love and loyalty are earned, not inherited. My own journey from heartbreak to healing has been one of immense personal growth. I learned to rely on my own strength, to advocate fiercely for my child, and to build a life grounded in authenticity and self-worth. The vulnerability I felt on that phone call has been replaced by a quiet confidence. I faced a profound betrayal and emerged stronger, more capable, and more certain of who I am and what truly matters. My parents remain absent from our lives. There is no longer anger or sadness associated with their absence, just a peaceful acceptance. They made their choice, prioritizing their prejudices over their grandson, and they are living with the consequences of that decision. Their inability to see Leo's worth, to extend unconditional love, is a reflection of their own limitations, not a commentary on him or our family. My life today is one of quiet fulfillment and deep happiness. I am professionally stable, personally content, and surrounded by the unconditional love of the family Leo and I built together. The past is a reminder of the challenges we overcame and the lessons we learned, but it does not cast a shadow over our future. We are looking forward, two figures walking hand in hand, surrounded by the light of the love we chose, ready for whatever the future holds.